Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and today we have my August wrap up. My cat has lots of energy and she is running back and forth up here, so you may hear some cat noises. Oh my god, the way she is staring at me right now. Can you please be careful? I'm taking her in the car later, and so I gave her some of her like cat drugs. I don't know if they're just like hitting a little weird today or what, but she's energetic. But that's not what we're here to talk about. I read 6 books in August and they span all the way from 1 star to 5 stars, so it was really quite the reading month. I was pretty busy in August, so I felt like I didn't have a ton of time to read, but I'm really happy that I managed to still read 6 books. Felt a lot of feelings, so let's just talk about it. So we did start on a bit of a low note. The first book that I read in August was Undercover Bromance by Lyssa K. Adams. I buddy read this with my friend Jocelyn from Yogi with a Book, and I gave it 1 star. So this is my unpopular opinion. Honestly, like, I just don't really understand the love for this book. Often when I dislike something, I'm like, okay, I can see like some elements, but I don't know, the first book in this series was awesome. I loved it, but I just felt like this one was a huge miss for me. I want to start off by saying that the entirety of this story needs a pretty blatant trigger warning. The real like main conflict of this book centers around sexual assault and harassment in the workplace. Our main character, Liv, witnesses her awful, misogynistic, creepy, gross boss harassing a coworker at work, and she gets fired after intervening, and she then is like hell-bent on getting revenge, taking him down, etc. At face value, sounds great, right? Like, who doesn't want all of the gross, creepy bosses to get what they deserve? But Liv spends so much of this book just confronting the victims and shaming them for not coming forward and blaming them for his continued predatory behavior, and like literally says to one of the victims, "You're no better than him if you don't speak up," or something to that effect, which is just disgusting. It just really has like it just has so much victim blaming, gaslighting, and it just made me really angry the entirety of the book. Like, I can see what the author was going for, right? She's trying to make a statement and she like wanted, I don't know, to empower women or what, but I just feel like it didn't work. Also, there is a side romance between like a hippie liberal and a conservative ex-cop, and I just feel like that's not like the vibe we should be going for if we're trying to write a progressive story. It was just gross and I didn't get it. At the end of the day, like, I don't really want to talk too much about this. I did write a review on Goodreads, but basically Liv just, it sucks. She's super judgmental, she's really immature, and just like pretty disrespectful overall. Mac, the love interest, was fine, but he fell for Liv, so like I lost a lot of respect for him because of that, to be totally honest. Also, the banter was so cringy. I hated it. There was literally a line that was like, "Is it hot in here or is it just my vagina?" What? Who says that? What does that mean? I just felt like there were so many character inconsistencies. I felt like it was just not the right way to tell this story, and I had a couple other issues with it. The first book, like I said, it was awesome. I gave it 4.5 stars at the beginning of the year, and one of the things that I really loved about it were the chapters from the romance book that the book club was reading. But this book felt like the book club just wasn't really a big thing anymore, and I really missed that. She didn't insert any chapters from the book they were reading. They didn't even really have any like book club meetings or anything. It was like not really a part of the story, and I just was bummed. Additionally, there's a character who is just referred to throughout the, I think, entire book, maybe not at the end, as the Russian, and his entire personality is just that he's Russian and lactose intolerant and therefore farts a lot. The number of fart jokes in this book, are we adults? So those are just like a couple of the things that I really didn't like. I'm sure there are other things I'd want to say, but I just don't want to talk about this book anymore. I don't recommend it at all. I don't think I'm going to continue with this series. I would especially not recommend it, obviously, for survivors of sexual assault. or harassment. Trigger warnings for both of those, victim blaming and slut shaming, misogyny. Yeah. The next book I read though was definitely better, and that was Little Weirds by Jenny Slate. Little Weirds is a collection of essays written by comedian Jenny Slate. They largely have to do with her semi-recent divorce and just the varied and pretty wide-ranging emotions she felt following that. However, there are also some stories in here that are just sort of like about life, things she notices, trips she's taken, or just like weird imaginations of like conversations of her between herself and her like subconscious. So it was just like a whole conglomerate of a lot of different things. This is definitely like unexpected. I don't know what I was anticipating going in, but it was much more hard-hitting and emotional in some spots than I was anticipating. It was also really funny in some parts, and there are so many essays that I like already want to revisit and just like relive that. I don't know. I did annotate this one, so I really look forward to going back and kind of browsing through all those tabs someday. One of the things that I really enjoyed about this is that so many of the stories were sort of mystical or magical or whimsical, but it was just, that was how Jenny Slate was talking about her very real experiences and emotions. So it was a really interesting dynamic, because in some ways it felt so otherworldly and also so relatable. Because of this, I feel like sometimes the emotions really caught me off guard, not necessarily in a bad way at all, but like Jenny Slate herself, who, if you've watched any of her stand-up, I mean, you know she is pretty weird and just like kind of a lot. This book is weird and it's kind of a lot despite being really short. Some of these stories are just like, where did you come up with this? I definitely didn't love all of them. Some of them I was just like, I don't know what you're going for here, but I don't know. I really just loved that it felt like her, and yeah, it's so weird. I've heard the audiobook is great also because she reads it, so I'd definitely check that out in the future as well. Maybe even just to like revisit some of my favorites. I did keep track of my favorite stories in here. There's like an index at the front, so I just underlined the ones that I loved, and yeah, like I said, I look forward to revisiting them in the future. I ended up giving this one 4 stars and would definitely recommend if you're a fan of Jenny Slate. If you're not, you probably wouldn't like this. Like if you don't find her funny or you don't enjoy her storytelling, then probably don't read her book. But if you, like me, crack up at her stuff, then recommend for sure. The next book I read was The Last Mrs Parish by Constantine. I listened to the audiobook, which is narrated by Suzanne Elise Freeman and Megan Wolfe. I ended up giving this one 2.5 stars. So this story is a mystery thriller, like a domestic thriller, following Amber Patterson, who just like wants her life to be more exciting, and she wants money, status, love, and she has a plan for how she's going to make that happen. Daphne Parrish is a woman that lives in the same town as her, and she has all of that. She lives that life every day, but Amber decides that she's going to take that for herself, basically. So Amber really uses her cunning and her charm to worm her way into the Parrish's life until she's literally spending holidays with them, going on vacations with them, and becomes Daphne's most trusted friend and confidant. However, Amber is harboring a bit of a secret about her past. We don't know what it is as we're reading, but she is desperately hoping that it doesn't come out and ruin everything that she's planned. So this one definitely had some elements and tropes that I really enjoyed. First of all, I do really often enjoy a good, unlikable character, especially in a mystery thriller, I think. But Amber sucks. She is truly like one of the worst characters I've ever read. Like a good characterization, but oh my god. She's petty, she's rude, she's incredibly manipulative, and like she keeps that all inside, so everyone else thinks she's this like really immature and just like kind of naive character, and she like plays people well. I obviously like was not rooting for her at all, but I was still invested, and like being in the mind of that kind of person is really intriguing. There's, however, definitely a point where I was like fed up with Amber. Like I didn't want to be in her head anymore. It was exhausting. She was really judgmental in many different ways. There's definitely some ableist language, some fat phobic comments, and just like a lot of hate in general. Halfway through the book, we switched perspectives, and I feel like that definitely helped for me want to like continue reading. The beginning was entertaining. I was intrigued to see where it would go, but then after like the initial like, okay, cool, there's something new in part 2, it kind of went downhill, and I'm gonna have to talk in spoilers to tell you what I didn't like. So if you don't want to see spoilers for why this ended up being such a low rated book for me, skip ahead to this timestamp. The second perspective that we get is Daphne's, which I don't think is really a spoiler. That's probably gonna be pretty obvious, but we learn once we shift that this seemingly perfect marriage between Daphne and her husband Jackson is in reality very abusive. Jackson is just absolutely horrible, and maybe even more manipulative than Amber is in the first half. He's both physically and emotionally abusive to his wife. He eventually cheats on her, and he's really horrible to both his daughters, especially the younger one, who appears to have some sort of learning disability, but he refuses to allow her to get tested for anything, and just like harps on the fact that she's stupid. It's awful. He is horrid. So Daphne realizes what Amber is doing, that she's trying to make Jackson fall for her so that she can have this life, and Daphne decides to go for it. So she plays into what Amber is doing. So it seems like Amber is really manipulating Daphne, but in reality, she knows exactly what was happening the entire time. So she sees this as like her only way out of an abusive situation, and decides to like speed along the manipulation, I guess. And I can't get on board with a story where a woman who's experiencing such awful, harmful, and just really degrading abuse would let that happen to another woman who eventually is pregnant with Jackson's baby. So not only is Daphne like setting Amber up for this, but also Amber's unborn child, and like seeing what he's done to her kids, like I had a lot of feelings about it. So I just don't think there's any excuse or like any rationale. Like, I don't care how horrible someone is, like sure, they should receive some form of punishment, but I don't know, I had a really hard time with that. So overall, I just felt like the end of this book really let me down, and I hated the way the story went. But like I said, I was invested early on, and had it not gone the direction it did, had something else been the twist or whatever, I would have liked it more. Trigger warnings in this one for domestic violence, manipulation, cheating, gaslighting, emotional abuse, fat phobia, ableist language, and yeah, probably more. It was a lot. Okay, I feel like we kind of like seesawed back and forth. We had one that I didn't like, one that I did, one that I didn't, and then I read Such a Fun Age by Kiley Reid. Again, I listened to the audiobook for this, and that is narrated by Nicole Lewis. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Such a Fun Age follows our main character, Amira, who is a 23-ish-year-old black woman who's really just like trying to figure things out. She's a recent graduate. She doesn't really know what her path is, what she wants to do, and for now she is working part-time for a political party office, and then also as a babysitter for the Chamberlain family. One night she's asked to take, I think, 3-year-old Briar out of the house to provide as a distraction while there's like a lot of commotion at the house, and they go to a local bougie grocery store. I kind of pictured like a Whole Foods, and a security guard accuses Amira of kidnapping Briar. Someone ends up recording it, and from there it's just kind of multiple characters trying to figure out how to make it right. So this is another book told in multiple perspectives, from Amira, the babysitter, and also Alik's Chamberlain, who is the mom and the woman that she works for. I thought the way that Kiley Reid navigated the dual perspectives in this was really well done, and it really just allowed the reader to experience all sides of things like white privilege, implicit bias, performative allyship, and see it from multiple angles. You could see not only how it affected Amira herself and the like cheeky responses she had to a lot of it, but also Alik's and her rationale and thought process, because she is white and a bit of a white savior. I did really enjoy a lot of this. However, something about the pacing felt a little bit off to me. There were times that I zoned out a bit and was just kind of like waiting to get to the next plot point. But that being said, it definitely challenges readers to think about race, and for white folks in general, I think clearly laying out the issues with that white savior complex and making it very obvious, not only like from the white person's perspective, but also seeing this young Black woman's response to it and hearing how her friends react, and just like all of that, I think was a really effective way to talk about this topic. I also just loved Briar, the little girl. She is so weird, and I loved her. So she was like my favorite character. I was also reading some friends' reviews as well, and one friend pointed out something that I didn't notice, but is really cool looking back on it, that as Amira becomes more comfortable in herself and like kind of just starts to have more confidence, we get more of her perspective and less from Alik's, which I thought was a really interesting like narrative tactic. Again, I didn't necessarily note it myself, but I really appreciate that storytelling. Overall, would definitely recommend this book, not only to read for yourself and by yourself, but I think it's a really good one to discuss with others. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Kiley Reid writes next, and I will definitely pick it up. Next is one that was pretty in the middle for me, and that was Bad Moms by Nora McInerny. This is a novelization of the movie Bad Moms, starring Kathryn Hahn, Mila Kunis, and Kristen Bell. If you've seen that movie, then you pretty much know exactly what to expect going into this book. So Nora McInerny took these 3 characters and expands on the story from the movie. So the 3 women are exhausted and just fed up with the expectations of being a good mom and everything that that means, and just struggling with some insecurities, and they're ready to go head to head with the PTA Queen Bee Gwendolyn and prove that there are many ways to parent, and it doesn't necessarily mean one is good or bad. I'm gonna be totally honest, I don't have a lot to say about this book. Like I said, if you've seen the movie, then you pretty much know what's gonna happen in this. While I love Nora McInerny, and I've talked about her a couple of different times in recent videos, I'll tune into all of her projects, whatever they are, but I'm just not sure that this book is like, or this story is best told in novel format. I feel like it worked really well as a movie. Just like seeing all the hijinks and everything play out was much more effective than the novel for me personally. I think that Nora did a really good job developing these characters a little bit more and making 3 really unique voices. I particularly was tickled by Kiki, which is Kristen Bell's character. Though I have a lot of issues with her husband. Overall, this is entertaining, it's funny, it's, you know, very easy to read. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, and it was honestly a good book to balance with my final book of August. The final book that I read in August was The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. I buddy read this again with Lily from Lily Eleanor Reads. We buddy read the first book together, and we're hoping to buddy read the last one as well. This book is so heavy. It is massive. Like, are you kidding me? In the second installment of the Poppy War trilogy, we once again are following Fong Runan as she is navigating the world after the events of book 1. I'm not gonna get like too deep into the synopsis, so if you have read the Poppy War, you can keep watching. If you haven't and you don't want spoilers, skip ahead to the timestamp over here, and you can hear like just more vague thoughts on my feelings. Okay, so this book takes place in a world that is just reeling after the 3rd Poppy War, and Rin is just not doing so hot. She's dealing with a lot of pretty deep post-traumatic stress disorder. It's not named as such in the book, but it's pretty clear that that's what's happening after she has destroyed the island of Mujin, and like the end of the war, just all the violence that's happened, she's having a hard time with that. She's also pretty severely addicted to opium at this point. So in a desperate attempt to save herself, she joins forces with the dragon warlord, Neja's dad, who plans to overthrow the Empress and create a republic. This grand idea is that everyone's voice is heard and all leaders are freely and fairly elected to their positions of power. But as Rin learns more about those powers that are at play, she really wonders if she's made the right move. Okay, so now that we've got the synopsis out of the way, I'm gonna just kind of be a bit vague to avoid any overt spoilers, so bear with me. First of all, I loved this book, but I'm not really sure it fully lived up to the Poppy War for me. So book one has like the academy setting trope that I really, really like. I was fascinated just by how R.F. Kuang managed to weave in the world building to that one through the courses that Rin was taking and the professors and masters that she was learning from. Alternatively, I'm not a huge fan of like the military slash war setting trope or whatever, and that's entirely what this one is. I was just kind of like missing like the like innocence of the academy. I mean, as innocent as a military academy can be anyway. However, the character development in this book is out of this world. I was just like, it was outstanding. There were so many emotional points in this book for me, and I feel like all of them were like a character realizing or coming to terms with some sort of tragedy, or like getting into a situation that they suddenly are like realizing shouldn't be normal. Like they're doing something or seeing something that feels like, you know, run in the mill at this point, and then like realizing like, oh wait, no, this is significant, this is not normal all the time, it's like, this is the effects of war. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but excuse me, R.F. Kuang, I'm going to need you to send a personal apology to all of my friends and family, because all I can talk about after this is the friendship between Rin and Katai, and also like the complexities of Ninja's character, because that is something I just have been thinking about it and talking about it a lot. So apologies to everyone who's had to hear me go on about that. I'm sure at this point you have heard of the Poppy War, you've seen people reading it. The final book comes out in 2 months, so like everybody is getting hyped for good reason. I just think this book is like, this world, everything about it is just really stunning in so many different ways. Definitely consider picking this up. Just know going in that it is an own voices Chinese military fantasy that has a lot of parallels to the history of China and various wars and conflicts that China has experienced throughout the years. And there are loads and loads of trigger warnings. I'm going to link Melanie from Mel to the Ennies reviews for the Poppy War and the Dragon Republic in the description box, because I think she does a really good job listing all of them, and she's really on top of it, and I don't want to miss any. There are a lot, so please check her review. Just read up on it before you go in, because it definitely has a lot of really intense themes. If it's unclear, I did give this 5 stars. Like I said, I don't know that it's like quite to the 5-star level of the Poppy War, but it's really good. All right, so all of my reviews for these 6 books will be linked in the description box below. I will also try to list all of the trigger warnings that I mentioned in the description box. So that's it. I've had a lot going on in August, so I am pretty proud that I managed to read as many books as I did. I'm glad that we like started on a low note, but then ended with like another favorite, because R.F. Kuang, I'm just like obsessed with R.F. Kuang as a person. She has been doing some like Instagram lives lately as she signs book plates and end pages and stuff, and it's just like, she's a delight. I highly recommend following her on Instagram and Twitter if you don't already. But anyway, if you've read any of these books, if you want to discuss them, if you have other opinions or thoughts, if you disagree or agree, let me know in the comments below. I would love to chat about them with you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on my next video. But until then, happy reading. Bye.